Okay, this is segment number 9, and now I hope what I can do for you, and I really love doing this, but it's a long module. You got a lot of stuff to do here, so I hope you're successful here. What I basically want to do is recount for you, 9 or 10 really fascinating studies in the field of mind-body medicine. And what I'd like you to do with each one of these is, in your own words, type up a summary in terms of what was the method, what was the result, and what did it mean. And in this first study, very interesting, done at the University of Michigan, Foltz and Millett, 1964. Very interesting study. What they did in this study is they put monkeys in cages right next to each other. And it turned out in one monkey's chamber, there was a little lever. And they gave both monkeys shocks, if you will. They shocked both monkeys. Sounds like a Peter Gabriel song, for those of you who go back that far. For those of you who don't, type in Peter Gabriel, shock the monkey, and you'll see what I'm talking about. I know, weird songs. Sorry about that. That was after he got out of Genesis. So anyway, what they did is they shocked both monkeys, and one monkey had in its chamber a little lever, where it could turn off the shock for both itself and the other monkey. So they called the monkey that had the little lever in its chamber, it was called the executive monkey, because it had the control. The other monkey was called the sucker monkey. No, it was called the passive monkey, the monkey that had no control over the situation. And so what they did is they delivered shocks to both monkeys until the executive learned to turn off the shock for both itself and the passive monkey. It took approximately 15 to 20 trials for the first executive to learn how to do this. And as it turned out, this study was taking place at the University of Michigan. If you know anything, people going to Michigan, and don't write this down, people going to Michigan and Ohio State don't necessarily care for each other. So what it turned out had happened is apparently that executive monkey was eating too many bananas, even for the 60s. So they couldn't afford all the bananas, so they outsourced that executive and brought in a new executive. Are you believing any of this? Hopefully you're not believing any of these banana stories, or else I'll drive you bananas. No, maybe not. Basically, they brought in a new executive after the first executive learned to turn the shock off for both itself and the other, the passive monkey. They brought in a new executive monkey. How many trials do you think it took the new executive to learn how to turn the shock off for both itself and the passive? Same thing, about 15 to 20. They took that executive monkey, took him out, and brought in a third new executive. Same thing again. At the end of the study, what do you think they found for the passive monkey? Same passive monkey, had roots in the community, and couldn't leave Michigan. Just kidding. Well, they found that the passive monkey had ulcers. And the question is, why did the passive monkey have ulcers? Well, what they reasoned and logicked out of this particular animal study is the passive monkey knew exactly what to do, knew how to control the shock, but could do nothing, and actually had no control over the situation. So knew everything to do, but had no control over the situation. And so the idea here, and even though we know that there's something that causes ulcers now, we still know that long-term stress like this lowers, I think it's IgA levels in the stomach, and thus stress can reduce our ability to ward off problems like this. And so the idea is, long-term stress like this was basically found to cause ulcers in the passive monkey. And the reason this is considered important is, think about jobs people have. Think about if you've worked a job before. You're a lower level employee and they bring in a new manager. You know everything to do, how to fix problems, how to handle things, but you're never asked, and you're given all the responsibility of working with the people below you. This is the passive monkey and the executive monkey study, that many times employees are at risk for developing ulcers, especially if they're in middle-level management positions, because they have all the responsibility of those below them, but many times none of the control. So this idea of mind-body medicine, this executive monkey studies, and a group of them done in the 60s, really led to that idea. Following along with this, classic animal studies. This was a study, Seligman is part of the group that studies optimism, but this is a very simple study. What Vicenteiner basically did is they put into two groups of rats tumor cells. These are cells, kind of starter cells, that they put these into rats that usually end up growing into cancer-producing cells and tumor cells that may end up causing cancer for animals. And so they put tumor cells, starter tumor cells, into two groups of rats. And then they basically shock these rats. This is what we do in classic neuroscience research. They shock both rats, but in one group, the rats could escape from the shock. So it was escapable shock. In the other group, they couldn't escape. And the question is, did the escape or non-escape matter here in terms of who developed cancer or not? And they basically found, as it says in the abstract here, that those rats who could escape the shock, that generally for them, 63% of them ended up, well, 54% of the rats receiving, no, I'm not doing this right. 63% of the rats receiving escapable shock, meaning they could get out of the shock, they rejected the tumor. So 63% did not get cancer. But in the other situation, only 20% of the rats, those that got inescapable shock, most of them, 73%, ended up getting cancer. So this idea of not being able to release from inescapable pain, from controlling things, and that having something to do with your health seems to be very important. They have found that patients who have cancer, as we'll talk about later, who have the correct psychological attitude seem to do a little better. So this was a famous animal study. The next one, and I put the abstract in, although it's kind of hard to understand, but let me just summarize it for you. This was a classic study. It actually founded the field of psychoneuroimmunology. Psycho for stress, neuro for the immune system, immunology, how stress affects the immune system. And this was a study done by Adder and Cohen. They basically took rats, and to these rats, they gave them saccharin, a little sugar, if you will. And after they gave them sugar, they gave them a drug that suppressed their immune system. And they did this over and over. Gave them sugar and gave them this drug. What seemed to happen after a number of trials is when they just gave them the saccharin, it seemed that the saccharin alone caused their immune system to become suppressed, as if they had suppressed their immune system behaviorally, that simply giving the product led to this immunosuppression idea. So what it says basically there is that they gave them the saccharin, gave them it's actually, cyclophosphamide, which is an immune suppressant, and then after a period of time, just giving them the saccharin caused this decreased immune response, as if something had become conditioned. So this study was key at showing that you could condition the immune system. You could condition somebody's immune system, which is very powerful if you think about it. So 3 key studies, method, result, and meaning. Next, what I wanted to cover for you, let's see how long I've been babbling on. I'll do the next series for you. Next group of studies are also very interesting. I think I'll actually cut it here.